Here we go, round one. I was asked to tell a little bit of my story and talk about, some of the things that brought me around to where I'm at, and really what I can say about that is uh, the illusion of self has really brought me into a place where I search for meaning in my life. And I understand that that's what I've been doing most of my life. So, uh, a little bit about my past. I am an alcoholic, and I say that because I use and I drink when I have every reason not to. Historically, that's been the case for me, and I use that to identify as an alcoholic. I use that to kind of set the table straight. Normally, most of my life, regardless of the situation, I would use and I would drink, and I would seek that out. I've always been attracted to drugs and alcohol. I started smoking as soon as I could light cigarettes, and I started drinking as soon as I could. So basically, my parents used and drank. The family dynamics were normal for the 80s in an oil filled town. And I was a sensitive kid. So, I didn't really get started using daily until I was a teenager. When I was around 10, 11 years old, I started experimenting with pot once in a while. I was smoking regularly by then, but by age 13, I was really using, by age 14. And what I was thinking about, the stuff that I wanted to share was, I was really attracted to gangs, and I was really attracted to violence because it gave me a sense of power. It was really misdirected. I was a super, super sensitive kid. And what people thought about me has always mattered. And so I would get around any type of crowd, and if I got a chuckle or a reaction, whether I was trying to or not, I would really vamp up whatever it was I was doing. And so if it was a negative behavior, I would vamp up that negative behavior. If it was being loud, I didn't really know how to approach the world positively as a kid. And even as a young adult, I didn't know how to do that stuff. So I was thinking back to, you know, um, my 14th or 15th birthday. See, in our gang, from about October 31st to November 20th was a really, really big time for us because a lot of our birthdays fell within that time period. So, um, you know, we would party pretty hard through that time. Well, we were celebrating our birthdays, and it was like a 3 week long party. I mean, it was always a party, but this was special. So back then we didn't have cell phones, so we were partying up at Daniel's house, and we had to go down to a payphone to order more drugs. And we walked down to Smith's. There's 5 of us, and used the payphone, kind of acting out in the parking lot. Well, one of our buddies came back with a purse, and he said, check this purse out. And we went through the purse, and that wasn't uncommon for us because crime and violence was a huge part of my story. And so I went through the purse, found a bunch of money, and then we discovered the keys in the car. And so we stole the car. And that night, as we partied, we decided to go on a road trip. Now, at 15 years old, 14, 15 years old, at the time, I didn't realize we were just babies, but we were very, very adventurous, you know. We would go into people's houses, we would, you know, do those kind of things. And we decided that we were going to take this car down to Las Vegas. And that's what we did. A bunch of kids, you know, we took this stolen car down to Las Vegas. And on the way down, we ended up getting in a car wreck, slid off the road. And what the weird shit would happen when we were using, you know. So this truck pulled up, and it was these guys, and they were all tripping on acid, you know. And so, yeah, we bought some acid. They gave us a ride to this gas station. We called the tow truck, took acid, went to Vegas, you know. And we were babies, and that behavior didn't stop until I was in my 20s, you know. I used and I drank, and I used and I drank, but I got in trouble, and then I would do really well while I was in trouble. Because, like, for whatever reason, I had this great ability to speak to adults. And so I could get in trouble, I could be in handcuffs, and I could, even as a kid, I could, you know, have an adult conversation with an officer, or I could be in the courtroom and I could have an adult conversation with the judge. And that was, you know, a gift and a blessing, because what would happen is they would talk to me and I would convince them that I was going to be okay. I would convince them that this was a phase. I could convince them that this was just, you know, something that I was going through, and that I was going to be okay. And, you know, eventually I was right, because I'm okay now, but it took a long time. And so, you know, that type of behavior and that gang activity landed me in juvie. Around that same time, I went to a youth home. I grew up in Wyoming. I went to a youth home, youth facility across the state from where I lived, and it was the most locked down facility for kids at the time. And they did an evaluation on me. Well, I don't know what the evaluation found out, but they sent me back home and put me in another youth home in town. And when I went and seen the judge, he said, you know, you need to either go back to high school or get your GED. And I wasn't going to go back to high school. I fucking hated school. I hated authority. I hated the whole scene, and the idea of being able to get out of school early was very appealing to me. And so that's what I did. I got my GED, and at age 16 I graduated. I got off paper, and I had my own place at age 16. And so my drug addiction, my drug use really picked up, and methamphetamines, marijuana, hallucinogens, the whole thing was abundant and prominent, because the people that I was running with were running with some heavy, you know, some pretty heavy drug activity coming out of Utah and coming out of Mexico. And so we always had drugs. We always had it. And the Pisces that we hung out with didn't have any problem paying kids, especially me, who had a car. You know, they would pay me in drugs to drive them around from place to place, do deliveries, things like that. But it didn't seem like a big deal. You know, I was just partying. And I did that until I was 24. When I was 24, the local authorities called DCI in Wyoming did a sting operation on me and some of my friends, and I was arrested for conspiracy to deliver methamphetamine. And even then, I wasn't taking it real seriously. But what happened was, it landed me in treatment. For whatever reason, I didn't go to prison. I went to treatment, and I was grateful, I guess, because I didn't mean to get sober that time. I didn't mean to fall into the 12-step lifestyle, right? I was planning on going into treatment, leaving my addiction at the door, and picking it up. And when I left, and that's not what happened, because what ended up happening in there was that there were some pretty great ladies that did a lot of work on me, and was able to tear through the tough exterior that I had built on myself to protect me from being hurt from the world around me. And that's really what was going on with me. I, I agree with the big book Alcoholics Anonymous when it talks about men and women drink essentially because they like the effects produced by alcohol. I did not like the effects produced by alcohol when I first started drinking. It took me some time to get used to the effects produced by alcohol. I did not like the effects produced by marijuana when I first started doing it. It took me time. I had to get into it. What I was attracted to was the people that were doing those things. And this included my parents, my siblings, their friends. Everybody seemed to be having a good time with it, and I wanted to be a part of that. And I became a part of that. So I went to treatment, and that's where they started taking us to meetings. I'd been to a few meetings before that. I tried a little bit of sobriety here and there, trying to convince myself that maybe this time I won't use. But like I said, I'm an alcoholic. And I say that because I use and I drink when I have every reason not to. And so treatment took me to different places, and I was able to get a taste for 12-step sobriety. I liked the people. I liked what they talked about. And the thing about it is that there was a lot of people in there talking about the stuff that I kept secret. They were talking about the things that I didn't want to talk about, like stealing from my parents, like lying to my friends, like sleeping with my friends' girlfriends, not having any boundaries, really, letting go of any moral code that I may have ever had, and just becoming the junkie that I eventually became. I accidentally stayed sober for 3 years after that, but I never quit going to meetings. I got into a relationship in Narcotics Anonymous, and I got married to a girl. And that's when, prior to that, everything was a street drug. Prior to meeting her and getting with her, everything was a street drug. And she really opened up the door for me to learn how to use doctors for my drugs. And it was really cunning and baffling the way that the narcotics took over my life. I was working in the oil field, making really good money, I had good insurance. I was young. I was, clean, doing meetings and talking the talk. And I'd go to this doctor, and he'd start me out on a Percocet 5, and a few Somas, and then next thing, fast forward 6 years, and I'm doing Oxycontins daily and calling in prescription for Lortab, Percocet, different hospitals all the time. And of course, our relationship fell apart, our marriage fell apart, and I left. After 6 years of it, I left, and I went back to my hometown. Now, at this point in my life, I was finally ready to pick up again. I had went from age 24 into my 30s without touching meth, and meth was really essentially my drug of choice as a kid. But I went back to my hometown with full intention of jumping back in the meth pipe, and that's what I did. I spent most of my life high. I spent most of my life avoiding myself. I spent most of my life really denying the amount of self-damage that I was inflicting on me. And so when I went back to my hometown after this marriage, I went back full on, fully determined to just wreck myself. And it was a conscious decision, and that's what I did. And those of us who have tried this stuff can recognize and understand that that's a dark, dark place. When you hurt yourself on purpose because the pain of reality is too great to bear, that's a dark place to be. And that's where I was at. I went back to the bar I left when I was 24 to go to treatment. And the same people were in the same place doing the same shit. And I started doing the same shit with them. The only difference was now I was older and I had a narcotic problem. And because I couldn't get the doctor's prescriptions that I wanted, I decided to start doing heroin. And when I did that, everything changed for me. So I started doing heroin in my 30s, and I fell in love with heroin and meth together. Now, drinking was a staple. Like, I just drank. I drank every day. I always drank. But the drinking isn't why I'm an alcoholic. That's just part of what I use as an alcoholic. And identify as an alcoholic, but I am a drug addict and an alcoholic and all these things. But, you know, I look at the ism of it. You know, alcoholism, the way that I put chemicals into my body to change the way I feel about myself and my surrounding, is the reason that I'm an alcoholic. And then once I do that, the obsession to continue to do that just grows inside of me, and it becomes unmanageable to the point where all I do is react to that obsession. I compulsively react to that, and I continue in that ism, that disease, that dysfunction, until I'm physically removed from whatever chemical it is, whatever place I'm at. Because I will use in jail, I will use in church, I will use in a hospital. I don't care. I have to put it in my body. And so, you know, I started doing heroin, and nothing changed. I went right back to the criminal lifestyle. I went right back to the, you know, unhealthy sexual behavior. I went right back to not taking care of, you know, nothing was good. Nothing was good. Things turned out good, but at the time, the behavior was just super sick. I'm a self-mutilator, and it's not uncommon for me to hurt me on purpose to change the emotional way that I feel. I'll physically hurt myself. And that's why I put so much stuff into my body, man, you know, to change that. Anyway, for whatever reason, I ended up, you know, after about an 8-month heroin and meth binge, I ended up getting arrested for the last time. I got arrested for a strong arm robbery and possession of heroin. And I can get into a little bit about what those charges really mean. But, you know, I was ready and I was broken at that time when I had to come down from being strung out in jail as an adult and take a look back at the unproductive life that I had lived up to that point. I knew that something needed to change. And for me, I felt like I knew that the answer had lied in the 12 steps. And there was something in recovery. The astonishing thing that happened for me is that while I was in jail, I got this phenomenon and this unfamiliar feeling that I can only call a craving for life. I became thirsty for a life worth living. And it's been a hell of a process. It's been incredibly fulfilling to work towards this stuff that I have in my life today. It's been incredibly fulfilling and meaningful to start the relationships that I have in my life, the opinion that I have of myself, the work that I've done You know, everything I do today is a demonstration to myself that I'm sincere about this way of life. Everything that I do in my life today moves me a little bit closer towards the man that I want to be, and everything that I want to do with my life. And, you know, being on this side of the alcoholism, the side of the drug addiction, is beneficial to everybody in my life. Everybody benefits from me being here. Everybody is appreciative of me being here. And I'm so thankful that I've been able to get to this point. The work has been totally worth it. The time has been totally worth it. And I wouldn't give up what I have today for anything in this world. Nothing. I will do everything I can to continue this way of life on a daily basis, recognizing that I am an alcoholic, I am a drug addict, and that I cannot use no matter what. And I make that commitment on a daily basis today. So, yeah, I mean, that's just such a short little bit of it, but you know, I'm really thankful for the opportunity to get to share this, and I will chop it up next time.